All right, class. First off, as always, good day. Glad you're here. So today, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be talking about prohibition. Okay. Now, this is a time during the 1920s. We're going to get into a little bit of the history of it. So we're going to go back into the 1800s a little bit and how did this come to be? Because as you guys know, nothing ever just really pops up, out of the blue. Usually things take time for it to grow and then um, basically take full force. So with that being said, here is your warm-up picture. Okay. Um, be sure you have like I said in the previous class, be sure you have the Google form that's in your Google Classroom. I would suggest that you have this already open to the side a little bit. So when we get to the questions, you can just type it in with ease. So for example, like the warm-up picture, there it is in front of you. So the first question, you know, uh, what do you see? Things like that. So that way you can create your list right there and then instead of pausing it, going back, pausing it, going back. Now, if you don't have the capabilities, let's say you're on your phone, um, that's fine. Okay, but just remember you should have the other form already up. That way you can pause the video and then go back to the question. That way you guys can see the questions as I'm going on. And so when you're hearing the lecture, you'll be like, okay, what do I need to listen up for? Okay, so there's your warm up. Now we're going to move on to the lecture in three, two, one. All right, so here's the thing, prohibition. That word alone, it doesn't mean just alcohol. Prohibition means to stop whatever um, ill-advised thing that's around. So whether we're talking about alcohol in this class right now, it could be about any other substance that could be considered bad for you and things like that. Okay, so that's what it means. But a lot of in history we attribute it to alcohol. Okay. Now, throughout the 1800s, there was a movement to remove alcohol from different towns and counties and states, even uh, because thing is, alcohol was seen as being bad. It changed people's personas, behaviors, things like that. Um, Mainly back in the 1800s, that was fueled by religious groups. Right? They felt that alcohol was the root of all the bad stuff that was happening. So again, like I was telling you, it changed people. Mainly men. Because again, remember, guys would drink. Especially in the 1800s and things like that. Um, and so they said, you know what? Because if we got rid of alcohol, then the men wouldn't be the way they were when they got home, slopping drunk and angry and things like that. And on top of that, they would lose money, you know. So they would have more money in their pockets, things like that. So some states actually stepped up and said, you know what, we're putting laws outlawing alcohol. You know, so states like Maine and Massachusetts, they did that. Okay, but the thing is, not all states were like that. Some states were like, yeah, yeah, we know we have some people who have problem controlling themselves, but we're not going to outlaw the whole thing. But there were some counties in within the states who would say, no, we're not going to sell alcohol here. They became known as dry counties. Okay, and they wouldn't sell alcohol at all. So let's say you lived in a county, we have like Fresno, Tulare, Kings, Kern, things like that. Um, if one of those counties, let's say like Tulare County, was a dry county, that means there's no way you could buy alcohol from a store. So if you wanted alcohol, you had to drive to another county, another neighboring county, and buy some. You but by 1900 though, the idea of outlawing alcohol was actually growing. It was being like, well, you know what? We're seeing some really bad things happening with these men who were drinking and things like that because they would leave work. Especially remember we're talking about the Industrial Revolution. Guys would work 14, 16 hours a day. They're tired and they just want to relieve that stress. So some of those guys went to bars and they would just drink, and then fine, go home, sleep for my 2 3 hours, and then go back to work. So they weren't even making that much money. Remember, I told you about the wages were. So some of these families were like, "You're wasting the money that we could spend on, for the family, on alcohol, and then you come home, you're drunk, you're angry, this and that, or you're just like can't even talk to you." So it's starting to get a problem. And one group of people who really took a stand were women. Right now, you have to remember, women don't have the right to vote yet. They really don't have much legal say, you know. But women stepped up and said, "You know what? This we've had enough. We've had enough." And they actually were able to convince men who could vote to change their minds on their stance towards prohibition. And things you have to remember, like I said, a lot of women felt that the alcohol was destroying their families. So pictures like this, what you see right there, um, lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours, basically saying, you drink, we ain't gonna kiss you. All right. Um, Now, the thing is, there was one religious group that was very much in the forefront of saying alcohol was bad, and that was the evangelical Protestants. And they felt that the saloons, the bars, as they call them, were corrupt and ungodly. That they were the ones that were pushing sin, and they're the reason if they got rid of the bars, then people couldn't buy alcohol, and if people couldn't buy alcohol, then they would just go home, and if they go home, I mean, they have money, and they can spend time with their kids, and maybe we just get some rest, you know, things like that. Okay. All right. So now here's the thing too. Even some factory owners noticed, you know what, we got some problems here. Uh, because the thing is, some of these guys, like I said, they would go after work, they'd go have some drinks. They would be, just tired because they only got so many hours of sleep. And again, the repercussions of drinking too much is a hangover. So some of these guys went to work at a factory where there's a lot of machinery. There's metal work, so there's hot, you know, steel being poured in places, things like that. Um, these guys would not be on their top game, so accidents happened. Someone kind of drifting off, and all of a sudden, hand gets stuck in a gear, and then crashes a hand. Someone's not paying attention to their station, and all of a sudden there's like a fire brewing up, and just there were accidents. Okay, so a lot of these factory owners felt that if these men were sober, if they actually just went home, got some sleep, then they would then be ready for work, and there would be less accidents, and it would actually improve their efficiency and productivity at the workspace. So again, but you have to remember, like I said, these guys worked a lot of hours, all right, and they were constantly pushed by their managers and their employers to be like, hey, make more, do better, do faster, more, make more. Because again, the more they make, the more they sell, the more money the company makes. Okay. Now, Woodrow Wilson, which is right there, the president, you see, um, he ordered a wartime prohibition. Because remember, this is now World War One. Okay. So the United States is going to war, and he says, you know what, we need that hops, we need that grain that's used in beer to be saved for made into food now for our soldiers. So he basically halted the creation of beer and used that, like I said, grain for food for the soldiers and for civilians. Now, at the same time, this is when those people who wanted prohibition saw a moment to attack, right? So basically, they pushed and lobbied for Congress to make a law. So at the same time, Congress submitted the paperwork for the 18th Amendment, which is for prohibition to make um, alcohol illegal. It banned the manufacturing, transportation, of and the sale of intoxicating liquor. Okay, again, that means every type of alcohol that can be drank and consumed um, to get, in a sense, drunk. All right, and it was actually ratified by 11 by the three quarters of the states in 11 months. So less than a year, they were able to get it um, signed, passed by both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then get it ratified by three quarters of the states of the United States. Okay, and then from there, boom, it's a law, and it went into effect January 17th, 1920. All right, so here's your midpoint question. Who do you think had more of an impact on getting alcohol illegal? Do you think it was the pressure from women? Do you think it was the religious groups? Or do you think it was the factory owners? You know, and why do you think it was that group of people you picked? Okay, so there's a writing prompt on the bottom. So, like I said, on your Google form, there's this question right there. Uh, I basically give you guys a writing prompt, like I've done in class before. Now you got to type it out, okay, guys? And when I mean type it out, don't just put that little green section in because, no, write the whole thing down. Again, we're trying to teach you guys proper sentence structure, okay? I'm giving it to you guys. The words in color, like I told you guys in the other class, in the other videos, the part in color is where you put your opinion. Okay, so which one do you think? Is it the women, the religious groups, or is it the factory owners? Okay, that's where you would pick which one. And then because, and in the green section again, why? Explain. Why did you pick that group? Okay, guys, please, please, please write down the whole sentence. Okay, so give you guys a second to do that. Pause the video, type it out. Okay, and we're going to be moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we're going to get to the part where life gets a little interesting. Okay, so the federal and local governments struggled to enforce prohibition actually during the 20s because, again, people are very creative. I'm not sure if you know that or not. But the thing is, there was it was hard to them to say this person is selling alcohol illegally, and then you need probable cause, right? If you're a cop, you need probable cause. Well, how can you just say this person is selling alcohol, this person doesn't? If they just look like the ordinary Joe, things like that. How can you say a business is selling alcohol, and you go in there and you see there's no alcohol? Okay, so the to actually to get people was hard. Okay, now, there were several government agencies that said they basically handed down saying, here, you're in charge of cracking down on these uh, who is selling alcohol, who's carrying it, things like that. So first it was the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, the people who do mainly the taxes. Um, they were in charge of it. Then came the Justice Department. And then later, the government made their own group that specialized in finding people selling, buying, transporting alcohol, and that was the Prohibition Bureau. Okay. Now, here's the thing, though: the rules were actually stricter in rural areas. That basically means little towns, things like that. The rules were followed more by the letter. You know, you can't sell alcohol. Not boom, there it is, right there and then. Um, but in urban areas, downtown, big cities, things like that, um, the rules were a little bit less as strict. It's kind of weird that way. And you're gonna find out in a second why. Okay. So some people became known as bootleggers. And this is the picture right above the black and white one. Um, you can see why right there. The lady has a bottle of, which would probably be like maybe whiskey or some of that, and they stick it in their boots, so it doesn't really show. Okay, um, and that's why they were called bootleggers. Now, people carried alcohol different ways, through cars, things like that. They would have it personally on them, different ways. But the term bootlegger was basically anybody who is making, transporting, or selling liquor. Okay, so that's a great example of one right there. Now, the places, an actual building, an establishment that was selling liquor became known as speakeasies. Now, I put it there. How you say it really? Speakeasies. Speakeasies. The picture you see right above my little video, that is an example of a speakeasy. A lot of these places, some of them were underground, some of them were behind hidden walls. Um, I mean, people, like I said, people are creative. This was a really good example one I found. As you can see from the brick and the structure of it, you can tell it's basically underground. And as you can see, there's a bar in the background area. There's some tables, seating around. You know, maybe behind, where the camera was taken, there was like a little dance area. You know, so it's people were pretty creative. Now, the thing is, some people, especially in the rural areas, in the outside area, um, they made their own liquor, and they did in secret. Okay, they would make things like moonshine. And the thing is, it's not just in rural areas. Some places they actually made alcohol inside cities. You and we'll get into that in a second when they get to the you know who would do that kind of stuff. Okay. Uh, Now, the selling of illegal material, at this time it's alcohol, that's straight cash that these people are getting. So crime syndicates and the mafia, they started saying, we can make a good amount of money off this because people are obviously, they want their alcohol, they want to drink. So if we get in on this, and besides it's illegal, and we're not supposed to be doing legal stuff. So this seems like right up our alley. So the mafia and the crime syndicates are basically going to be making money off this prohibition. All right, so one of the biggest people to come out of this time, and trust me, there was a lot of mafiosos and stuff like that, but one of the biggest names was this man called Alphonse Capone, or Al Capone. Um, from what I could find, one of the things they were talking about is he made $60 million a year off bootlegging and speakeasies. $60 million. Now, um, what happens is he's making that much money, right? He's in Chicago. He's making a bunch of money. He basically pays off the police. He's paying off people. He's threatening organizations, things like that. Um, and the later lessons, we're going to be talking about the Great Depression. What he actually does too is he creates this thing called a soup line, right? Is basically he feeds the people of Chicago basically soup and bread, and the people love him for that. And the thing is, some people are like, "Oh, he cares about the people. He's a Robin Hood." No, this is a straight killer. And the thing is, he used this opportunity when people are hurting during the Great Depression to get them on his side. you know. And some people felt he was on their side because he would give people money, things like that. It's like, well, he's making your money off of you, you know. And the thing is, you cross him, you do something that he doesn't want, he might kill you. Okay. Now, the amount of money I was being made, like I was saying, it was tremendous, and it caused these gangs and these crime syndicates to fight one another. They had territories in a sense, and if you crossed into our territory, you're trying to make money off of us, or you're taking money from us, we're going to come after you. And that's what these mafias and these crime syndicates did in these gangs. And no greater example was done than the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was headed by Al Capone. All right, that was his way of getting rid of a rival gang. Basically, he had some men dress up as police officers, pull these guys over, you know, um, arrest them, quote unquote, arrest them, and told them to line up against the wall, and they shot them with the Tommy gun and massacred them. Okay, and there's a Chicago newspaper right there talking about the incident. Now, the thing is, you would think that, oh, this is just enough to get people like, oh, this is bad. No, some people still went out and drank, but then now there's more problems coming up. Um, there's a rise in price of alcohol now. Before it used to cost, I don't know, let's say 5 cents. Now it jumped up to 8 cents, 10 cents, 12 cents. And people are like, well, why is it going up? You want it or not? Well, the beer's not even tasting that great. Then don't buy it. And they know people are going to buy it because they have nowhere else to go, especially in places like Chicago. It's all owned by Al Capone. So you have no other place to go to buy it. The rising number of gangs, you know, these gangs are starting to crop up and saying, you know what, we live here. This is our territory. Not this other group who think they are. No, this is gonna be our area. We're gonna take over any business here. This is our place. And violence is just through the roof. Um, the number of arrests done because of the prohibition, arresting people drinking, selling, transporting alcohol, the gang violence stuff. Um, and because there's so many more arrests, there's not enough jails and prisons. So they need to make more. And the support for prohibition started to dwindle. People were like, yes, it was so good. People are now sober and this and that. But with all these problems piling up, now people are like, maybe this is not good, you know. And people now are really starting to realize that the mafia is making so much money and they're not being taxed on this. This is straight cash. And with that money, they're able to take over territories, they're able to take over cops, politicians, so they get what they want. And if what they want hurts you in any which way, they don't give a care. So that's now a problem. Some people are like, well, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Then came the Great Depression, which we'll be talking about, like I said, in another lesson. And the government realized, oh man, we really need money to do things. And since alcohol is now illegal, we can't really tax alcohol. And the politicians realize, oh, we could really use that money right now to help out the economy. But they can't because it's illegal. How can you tax something that the government deemed illegal? So now they're in like a catch-22 situation. All right, so the election of 1932, FDR, which is the guy on the bottom here, he ran on the platform of repealing prohibition, basically getting rid of it. And he easily defeated Herbert Hoover, which is the guy in the background. Um, and in February 1933, Congress adopted the 21st Amendment, which basically overturned the 18th Amendment. Now remember, the 18th Amendment said alcohol is illegal. The 21st says no, alcohol is legal again. And by the end of that year, again, like 11 months later, 3/4 of the states ratified it and it became official. But here's the thing, some states still held on to their right to say no to alcohol. and it wasn't truly officially abandoned prohibition until 1966. That's the last year that a state said, okay, alcohol's illegal, and then in 1966 they said, okay, fine, it's legal here. Okay, so I think there's a question. Yes, it is right at the very end. There's actually two questions here. Which of these problems do you think really brought the end of prohibition? Do you think it was the rise of violence, the rise in the alcohol price? You know, people were like, "Hey, that's way too much." Do you think it was the rise in gangs? You do you think it was the rise in number of arrests made, or do you think it was now we have to make more prisons, things like that? Geez, we have to put more money into that type of system. Do you think it was which one do you think was the one thing that really brought the needle over to people saying, you know, this is not a good idea? Okay, and explain your reasoning. And the last question is, do you think it was worth all the trouble to make alcohol illegal for just 15 years? You know, all that um, manpower to try to stop it, the rise of the mafia, you know, the rising crimes, the biggest rising gangs and things like that. Do you think it was all worth it? Yes or no, and why? Okay, so there's a writing prompt for each one. You know, like the bottom one, I do or you don't. Okay, continue writing out the rest of it. I do think that making alcohol illegal for 15 years was worth. Let me move this thing right here real quick. Was worth all that trouble because, and explain. Okay, the top one, I think that the rise in price of alcohol really brought the end of prohibition because la 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 la, whatever you think. Okay, so remember, be sure to write out the whole thing. Use the writing prompt. I'm giving it to you guys. Remember, use that red color. That's where you think, what you believe, your opinion. Okay, and always remember to justify it. Don't just put because I think so. What's that? No, really think about it, put yourselves in that situation, and then answer it. Okay, so with that being said, that's the end of this lesson. I hope you guys had a good day. Hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys learned something new. I'm sure some of you guys may have heard some of this lingo, like bootleggers, speakeasies, from watching some movies, things like that. So now you know. And if you don't know, now you know. All right. So you guys have a good day. Take care and please be safe, guys. Please, please, please be safe. Okay. Miss you guys. You guys have a good day.